Bishop. He hasn't been ever to one of these things, and I thought, you know, he's such a part of the family, he needs to come. There we are. Uh-oh, there are gummy bears here. He and I are going to be fighting over them. Thank you all for coming out. This is so much fun.
We have a few people to thank, Louise, before we get started.
Yes.
We have our friends from Raincoast Books who help support this event, and without Raincoast Books we wouldn't have this magnificent tent and things, so a big hand for Raincoast. But we can't forget also that we have Louise's publishers, St. Martin's Press, Minotaur.
They've come up from New York. Sally is the big publisher. She is the head of St. Martin's Press. She's one of the doyens of New York publishing. She arrived this morning, and I've tried to convince her that you're not all family or hired for this event. But I'll be paying you later.
And we also have Sarah. Are we going to introduce?
Sorry, of course.
Sarah,
and then there's the others.
Yeah. Well, Sarah's like your groupie, right? Because you travel around with her.
Well, she's kind of more, I'm more like her groupie. She's Sarah Melnick. I mention her every now and then. If you follow me on Facebook or get the newsletter, you might know Sarah Melnick. She's here. She's my publicist from St. Martin's. Now, the other one who's here is Paul Hockman. Does anyone here belong to the Gamache Bistro? Yes. Paul is the philosopher king, sometimes the village idiot. But more the philosopher king. He is the one who's created this virtual bistro that we have, and we can give out the website address in a moment. Paul is with the publisher, and he, for the last number of months, right? He's been writing the cultural inspirations of Three Pines, taking each of the books and choosing one element, and it's Paul. Do you want to stand up, Paul? Brilliant job.
At GamacheSeries.com.
GamacheSeries.com.
If you haven't checked it out, please do. GamacheSeries.com. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
We also have a former SQ officer here. Do we know?
Sûreté du Québec officer.
Yes,
that's
yes.
right.
Just in case we need some.
Who also happens to be our mayor.
Yes.
Mayor Richard.
And his wife, Susan.
Oh, and Susan.
The real boss. The real go-to person.
Well, actually, there is someone else I want to introduce, of course, is my assistant, Louise, is here. There she is, over there. And this book, Glass Houses, as you'll notice, is dedicated to her because she has become such a great friend.
I'm just noticing that the lights are not plugged in here. Maybe Laura, or could you come down and just plug those lights in right at the bottom of the base? Sorry, I think I gave the boys something to do over there and something to do over there. So we also have lots of other special guests here in the room.
Okay.
Who have come thousands and thousands of miles to see you.
It's the Queen here.
Yes,
the Queen is here.
The Queen, the Queen Miss Penny. So
George Clooney.
We did this last last year. We had a map, which people put pins on, and Raincoast Books loved it so much. So Jamie out in BC had a map made, and you all saw it as you came in. And look, Louise, there people put pins all over the place. So they've traveled from everywhere to come and see you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
So,
and I also wanted, this is actually a really good opportunity to thank Brome Lake Books for all. I'll talk a little bit more about Brome Lake Books in a moment, but I just want to introduce the fact that two of Danny and Lucy's sons are holding up the map. There's Angus and Adam. Lucy Hoblin is over there. Did we get the...
Ben's there.
And Ben is right there. Ben is the third son. The gavels?
Yes,
You all have gavels, right?
Well, they might not. They all.
Well, that's it. They actually look like something, maybe even a little rude, but I won't say it. The person who made them, 300 of them, Lucy made 300 of them. 400. And I have a photograph that Danny sent me yesterday, the day before, yesterday it must have been, of Lucy's father, John, decorating them. Poor man.
We gave up very quickly. Too warm to be decorating cookies.
He's in therapy now. He couldn't make it.
I had this just in case they needed a visual aid.
What it should look like.
Or in case I say the wrong thing, and then you know.
And in case you don't know, this is Danny. Danny of Danny and Lucy.
Lucy, come up here. Well, I think Renalie's going to have to come up too, because I think there are a couple of stories. I think that you guys were going to. I'll give you the mic.
Hello. So Renalie, who is our principal of our local school, Knowlton Academy, and she's a fabulous principal. Very much encourages reading in here for everyone. So she was taking, she was asking everybody where they came from, and you got to put some pins in. We have a couple of stray pins that we're not 100% sure. So has somebody come from Denmark here? And or Northern Quebec? No, we didn't. Somebody came from Denmark here? No? Okay. So we have some people who have come all the way from Honolulu, Hawaii. And we would like to give you a map of 3 pines. So if the people from Honolulu, Hawaii can come up, please, we'll give it to a boy.
Give it to Ollie.
Ollie, where are you? Ollie, come up here. Come on down. The people from Honolulu, they're just over there with congratulations, they came from the furthest away. And then we have a couple from Donna and...
Josette's from Chicago, but Donna's from Denver.
Donna's from Denver, Colorado. And Donna, we called... Yeah, we called her on Thursday to tell her that we had some tickets for her, and she got in the car and drove all the way here. So congratulations. So Donna from Colorado, can you put your hand up, please? Ollie, where are you? She's over there. There. And we have some people from Orange County, California. Liz is from Orange County, California. Louise, so she can't talk right now. Oh, I took your, was it? Okay. So Liz from Orange County? Ollie? Right down there. Okay. And we have somebody from Rockland, California. Right over there. Okay.
We're actually going to call all of you out. One at a time.
So I'll leave down there.
And so, just in case you're wondering, that was a map of 3 pines, made by
St. Martin's designed this map of 3 pines. So, and there are only so many made, and so they're collector's items. I'd be happy to sign them afterward if you'd like.
I can't believe it's been a year since the last launch when we were here in this tent with CBS Sunday Morning.
That's right. CBS Sunday Morning came to film, and some of you ended up on the CBS Sunday Morning, right? Hogging my airtime, thinking.
And they did a really nice job. But did you watch it?
No, I haven't. I don't have the courage to watch it. I just can't. I can't. I know. Do you know the problem is that I become hypercritical, and I think, oh God, look, I don't look good, or I said something silly, or whatever. So I'd rather just pretend like I was brilliant.
You were.
And gorgeous.
They did a really nice job.
They did. I was very, very lucky.
And Martha was very kind. She was very sweet and really good with her questions. And
Yes, yeah.
they had a fantastic shot right at the end, which I don't know how they did of this, the mill pond, and with Martha's voice sort of talking about people coming back to 3 Pines, returning again and again, and a flock of ducks took off the pond and went off into the horizon. It
Is
was just
that right?
perfect.
Oh,
And it was beautiful.
that is wonderful. It's wonderful, isn't it, when the stars align and moments like that happen?
I wondered if Martha put you out in the bulrushes and we really
A little duck call. Yes, my level of competence finally reached.
But now you're an officer of the Order of Quebec.
I am.
Yes.
Yes, I was. Thank you. That was a beautiful moment. That was, these honors are never ever expected, and that certainly wasn't. And it was extremely moving. I've had a number of these events in the last year where I just thought I could never have seen this coming, particularly 10, 12 years ago, or when Still Life first came out, and just looking at all of you today. And Danny and Lucy hosted the first few of the book launches in the original store. And, some of you are nodding because you were there, that's right, but you remember they were like, you were just about the only ones. No, it's true. And then they got bigger and bigger, and the word spread, and then to be given the Order of Quebec, and this year the Order of Canada as well, which was wonderful. And this is actually, the little pin here is the Order of Canada. And on Thursday morning I was, or was it Wednesday? It was Wednesday morning. It's all a bit of a blur. Wednesday morning, I was in New York and interviewed by CBS This Morning, Gail King, and I wore the Order of Canada on the. I'm very proud of it.
And honorary degrees as well. A Doctor of Literature.
Yes, I can think. I have a prescription pad.
Carleton University.
Yes, Carleton this year, an honorary doctorate from Carleton. Amazing. I mean, really, honestly, I'm just up here flabbergasted. And do you know one of the nice things is that I can, like most people, sort of think, I don't deserve it, I don't earn it, they're talking about someone else, a terrible mistake has been made, and absolutely part of me thinks that. I mean, who doesn't? But I have to say, a part of me is this thinking, this is such a gift from God, from the universe, from Michael, that I think it would be a shame if I didn't revel in it and didn't accept it and embrace it. So.
When you find time to write, with all of the events and the honors, and how do you
Yeah, between banquets, I just between being feted.
So how do you squeeze it all in? What's your schedule?
I learned this early. I wrote still life. I wanted it to be published, the first of the books, obviously. But I didn't really expect it to be published, and no one really knew, of course, that I was writing, except Michael. So it took me about 3 years, and he was taking an arts course from the Bishop's outlet here. They would take some painting courses, and he signed up. And it was in the summer, so he would go around and with the class, and we'd sit in cow fields and by the lakes, and I'd go with him with my little laptop, and I was writing still life. It took me about 3 years to do it. And then it got published, which is in itself a bit of a saga, which I won't go into. But my publisher, by now I'm well into my 40s, and I'd always wanted to write since the age of 8. And I couldn't, and I didn't have ideas. And then when I had ideas, I had writer's block. And I finally finished a book, and it got published or sold. And my agent got in touch with me, and she said, now she's British. The only reason I mention that is, and it may be my colonial ear, but every time I hear someone speak with a British accent, I sort of, what I hear is an implied, as they're talking to me, you idiot. I mean, she could be saying something completely benign, nice weather, you idiot. So she phoned up and she said, Louise, you'll never guess what's happened. I have sold 3 books. Now, and I said, Teresa, that's great news, mine and who else's? And she said, they're all yours, you idiot. And furthermore, you have to deliver the next book within a year, and then the next book the following year. Now, it took me 43 years to write the first one. And honestly, I didn't even know how it happened. It really did seem like a magic, like this gift from the universe. And now I had to write another book in a year. I was petrified. But what I learned in the process, a few things. One was, and this sounds so self-evident, but it's discipline. And I think part of what separates the kind of the dilettantes or the amateurs, the well-meaning amateur writers, from those who, and she's saying, no, how's it going, Louise? And I said, oh, Teresa, I'm scared it's going really bad. I'm really so nervous. And she said, oh, for God's sake, it's not War and Peace you're writing. Too, with this vat of martinis and a cigar. So the next day, when she sobered up, she called back and she said something really valuable. She said, now the thing is, Louise, that most books are about, say, 100,000 words. Most writers can do 1,000 words a day fairly easily. Therefore, you do 1,000 words a day, you'll be finished in 3.5 months. Which, I was not. But what it taught me was that there is absolutely something magical about writing, and there is inspiration involved. But there is also a process. That if I sit down and I write, it can be 200 words a day, it can be 1,000, it can be 5,000. But if I do that, eventually I will reach the finish line. But that part of it isn't magic. I also happen to have read Terry Fox's biography that Douglas Coupland put out. Terry Fox was a Canadian who was diagnosed with cancer, had his leg taken off, and he decided, in order to highlight the need for cancer research, he would run across Canada from Newfoundland through across to Victoria. And he made it halfway before the cancer returned. He eventually passed away and is a great Canadian hero. And Douglas Coupland, he wrote a diary as he was running. And in it he said something that again changed my life and really helped me with the writing. He said that every day when he left his trailer to run, he didn't set out to run across the country every day. He, better than anyone else, knew what the goal was. What he did was he just ran to the next corner. Then he ran to the next corner. And he knew that if he did that often enough, he will end up where he needed to be. And that seemed to me an allegory for what I had to do. It's just write the best 1,000 words I can every day. Just run to the next corner. Run to the next corner, and eventually I'll reach the end. What was your question?
Where did the ideas come from? Do you search for? That wasn't the question, but so that's the discipline of just write.
Yes.
Just write. But what about do you search for ideas? Do you research, or does it just come bubbling out of your brain because you're like
dark brain?
You just
The murderous brain.
Billions of ideas. Yeah.
I'm always open to ideas. I read a lot of poetry. A lot of the ideas come from the poet, because the books, while about murder, are really about emotions, and poetry is really about emotions too. So I read a lot of poetry, I make notes, I carry around a notebook and have quotes. I listen to people inspire me, my friends inspire me. So I get all ideas from the news, of course, from this particular book, Glass Houses. One of the themes came from something that Michael's great friend, Richard Oliver, who was visiting us from Spain, happened to mention in passing. I wasn't even writing at the time, but it was so macabre and so haunting that I remembered it. And then when I started writing, I thought, eventually I'm going to write about this. But it took 13 years for me to decide the characters are at such a place, I'm at such a place as a writer, that now I can do justice to this particular image and theme.
And you're more about the why than about the how.
That's exactly right. And if you notice it, the earlier books are really, they're always about the why, but there was also a question of how. Like Miss Jane Neal, how did she die? In the book set in Hovey Manor, the Manoir Belchas, the murder stone, also known as Rule Against Murder, there's a big question about how did that person, how did the statue fall? So the beginning, the second book, certainly. The second book, which was extremely, as I said, difficult to write, and this is very well known. It is almost a cliche that the second book is difficult. I think it's called the Sophomore Slump, in fact, which you don't want to know about as you're writing. That's what it's called. And that one was, I wanted each of the first 4 books. I didn't know a great deal about how the books would evolve going forward, but I knew that I wanted each of the first 4 books to be set in a different season, because I wanted people to be, if they read the books, particularly in order, to get some sense of what it's like to live in Quebec through a year. So that the seasons change, the cuisine changes, the clothing changes, all of that. So I knew that the second book had to be set in the winter. And I was trying to figure out what will happen. And Michael came down for breakfast one day, and he said, it should be something really Canadian. And I agreed, and I said, do you have any ideas? He said, well, let me think about it. So he came down the next morning and he said, maybe it should be a curling match, and maybe it should be outside. And I thought, that's a brilliant idea, like a fun spiel outside. And he said, yes. And he came down the next day and said, maybe it should be on a lake in front of the entire village, and the victim is electrocuted. And I thought, and I said to him, that is genius. Now how? And he said, well, I got you this far. So for the next 3 weeks, I just stared into space. Finally had it. There's a reason why no reality shows follow writers. Because all we do, it's doing nothing and the creative process look exactly alike. Just staring into space.
All the interactions that you have between the characters. Now, is that intuitive with you? Sorry. Is it intuitive that
It is now, the interactions between the characters. It's gotten certainly much more so than the first couple of books where I was getting to know them as well. And it's so much fun to write. The scenes in the bistro, or when they're having the gatherings, and Ruth is there, and they're kidding each other, and who would say what, and even, I read somewhere early on that ideally what you want is not to have to say who's speaking, that it's so clear by what they're saying and the character that you can't mistake it, and that's what I aim for, and I think each of the characters now has such a specific voice that it's pretty obvious, and I love that. I love that. The trick, of course, the challenge is to make the new people who are coming into the novels as whole as the ongoing characters are.
you often write about people that are looking for a second chance? Is that why does that come in? What is it?
Well, you don't get gray in your hair without being given a second chance, sometimes a third chance. So I believe very strongly, and I believe very strongly in forgiveness. I could not get to where I am today and lug around all sorts of resentments. So even if it wasn't for the other person, if it's just selfish, I need to be able to figure out how to let go of most of them. If not, I'm not going to sit here and say I've let go of every resentment I've ever had. I haven't, but I think the vast majority of them I can. And I think that's all sort of tied up in second chances. If I want a second chance, and I always do, then I have to be willing to give others a second chance as well.
Your writing's often been a real comfort to people. They often come in and say it's saved them. Do you work at putting something element in your writing to give people comfort, or that's just you that's just coming out? Or
I think that's an interesting question. I don't do it intentionally. I have absolutely no agenda when I'm writing these books. I don't have a political one. I don't have a social one. I don't expect anyone to agree with whatever it is I'm writing about. Often it's things I'm exploring and struggling with myself, particularly honestly with this book, which I think it's fair to tell you at least that it's about conscience and the role that conscience plays in our lives, both giving us strength to do absolutely wonderful things, to lead us into brave acts we couldn't normally do, but also how many vile acts are done in the name of the conscience by people saying, well, I was just following my conscience. In terms of comfort, I started writing these books shortly after 9/11. And that was seminal for me, as it was, I know, for many of you. I suddenly, like everybody else, realized that everything I knew to be safe wasn't. And that was a bit shattering. And I felt the need for safety. And there's a saying that there are three places in our lives. There's work, there's home, and then there's the third place. And the third place is often imaginary, though not always, and it's the place where we feel comfort. If you're with a therapist or a hypnotist and they say, go to your safe place. And it could be a place from childhood, some place that you imagine. And that's what I wanted to create with Three Pines, was the safe place. And a safe place isn't a place where nothing bad ever happens, because that clearly is fantasy. A safe place is a place where terrible things can happen, but you still get over them, that it can recover from them. And that's what I think of Three Pines as. And it gets over them because of community, because of friendship, because of that compassion that we have for each other. And I think all wrapped up in that Three Pines is an allegory. And just intrinsic in that is the sense of comfort, that when I enter Three Pines, I'm comforted. And I love it when people write to say that they found some peace when they went there in a difficult time in their lives. And I thought it always made me feel just wonderful. But I didn't realize how much peace I would find writing about Three Pines until this past couple of years. And it's been a revelation for me about the beauty of the universe and the unexpected gifts.
Does that bring us to vulnerable people and glass houses?
Vulnerable?
Vulnerable people shouldn't throw stones.
Yes. Yeah. The saying that if you live in glass houses, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And I think we all live in glass houses, don't we? We sometimes think that we can hide with the public veneer and no one will know what's actually happening inside. But we give ourselves away, I think, often by our expressions, by our actions, by our tones. So yeah, I think judging others is always. I'm all constantly wrong when I'm judging others. So it's a bit humbling. And so that's what this is about. It's about the folly of judgment.
What are you hoping that we find in glass houses?
What am I hoping you find in glass house? I guess, like anything else, comfort, perhaps. Yeah, I don't. That's an interesting question. As I say, I can say this. I can look you right in the eye and say, I have no agenda. One of the things I think I like the most, and when I hear from people, is that so many people find different things in it. So I don't want to say what I hope you find, because you'll find, I hope, what it is you need to find.
Should we take some questions?
Yes,
from
let's take some questions.
Angus was going to help us out because we have a microphone here. But do we have any questions in the audience? Anyone around? Oh, there's a.
And the only thing I would ask is, because all the books are so intertwined, if you could not give anything away, like whodunit, would be great. Done.
Should we take two more questions? You saying?
Perfect.
Just two more questions. Okay.
It's so wonderful to be here in your presence. I've come from Michigan, and our French club just loves your books. We read them in English and in French, and we're trying to become more prolific in your beautiful language. I was fascinated by the character of Inspector Gamache, and I wondered, in forming this character, was most of it fictional, or did it come from inspiration from friends or family that you were associated with? Or, can you tell me how that came to be? He's a wonderful character to follow. Thank you so much for resurrecting him and putting him in your books.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that, because I love Gamache as well. He came from a few places. When I was designing, again, the initial core group and going to write Still Life, I realized if I was lucky enough that these books were published and then they continued on, perhaps for many, many years to come, that it would be an intimate relationship that I would have with this character. And I didn't want to grow tired of him, as apparently Christie grew a little bit tired of Poirot, and I didn't want that to happen. So I thought about it, and I thought that the best way around that would be if I created a character I would marry. And so that's how he came. He was also inspired by a number of real people. There is a great Canadian hero named Romeo Dallaire, who was in charge of the UN troops in Rwanda, and had to stand by while that genocide happened, even though he begged the UN to be allowed to intervene and help the people, and he wasn't allowed to, and it shattered him, and he came back with PTSD. He was a general, as did many of his troops, and he had the courage to admit it and to admit what happened, to say how he felt about it, to admit his PTSD, and to fight for significant changes and also for help for soldiers with PTSD. He is a genuine hero, and so I could imagine Gamache doing something similar. Romeo Dallaire. I have yet to meet him. I would love to meet Romeo Dallaire. He's on the short list of people I would just truly love to meet. And the other person who inspired Gamache was my husband Michael, who was, again, a genuinely wonderful man. Michael, he was the head of hematology at the Montreal Children's, and which meant that he had to do some he saw terrible things with children with significant cancers, and he held their hands and he stayed with them, and he had to talk to parents and say things to parents no parent should ever have to hear. But Michael loved life and was the happiest man I knew because he understood what a gift life is. And what a betrayal of those young lives who don't get to live it if those of us who do don't live it with joy. And Gamache has the same qualities.
What's your favorite book that you wrote?
That's a trick question, if I ever heard one. I will always have a soft spot for Still Life, of course, the first one. My contract with my 8-year-old self, when I knew I wanted to be a writer, was just to have a book finished. Not even that it be published or even any good, but just finished. And when I finished Still Life and wrote the end, I was so happy. And I knew that if it wasn't published, I would be disappointed, but I would have no regrets. And that's a wonderful feeling to have. So I can't say that that's my favorite, but it is certainly one that I have such a soft spot for. I know I probably should be saying glass houses, and in fact, the real answer is glass houses. Is that right, Sally?
Yeah, so I think that's it for questions. Before you rush off for
yes, I also want to say that I'll sign, obviously, all the glass houses, but if any of you have brought any of the other books, I'm happy to sign and be here for as long as necessary.
So you all
It's a
have
joy.
signed copies of Glass Houses ready because you were busy this morning signing all of them.
I signed all of them,
So-
but if you want them personalized,
Yes.
I'm happy to do that.
Perfect.